Morning. I'd like to call the Executive Committee meeting October 22nd to order. If we can get a roll call, please.
Mr. Lear? Mr. Washington?
Aye.
Mr. Legess? Mr. Hess?
Present.
Mr. Tholen? Mr. Byrne?
Present.
Ms. Weber?
Present.
Mr. Payton?
Present.
Mr. Kinzinger?
Present.
Ms. Haas?
Present.
Mr. Seroy?
Present.
Mr. Wheeler?
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. We have no public comment today. Under approval of the minutes, I need a motion to approve September 24th, 2019 minutes. Mr. Burns, second. Mr. Hess. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Under legislative, Steve Lear, you have anything for us today?
Mr. Chairman, UCCI has their annual dinner on this coming Friday, and then Saturday they have their educational seminar. I'll be attending the Saturday educational seminar. There are 3 topics that will be coming up. One, sweeping changes in Illinois employment law, the Workplace Transparency Act, and more. A second topic, high stakes, the impact of legalized marijuana on workplace policies. And third, everything going to pot, what you need to know about zoning and taxes. So I'll bring back information from those sessions.
Thank you for that. Should be a highlight. Wow. Yes. I guess nothing under appointments. Information services, Kevin Duvall had one quick update.
Okay, overall, we're still on point. We're moving forward with all our updates. The judicial just approved the purchase of machines for the public defender, then they're going to pay for them. So he had me send some numbers back to him. He'll do the final authorization, but it'll be no cost to the county board. And we're moving forward with Sandy's project, and we're waiting for the email server update for DevNet. That comes out of funds that were reserved in the beginning of the year. So again, none of this is an additional funds to the budget. So everything should be on pace to what we planned on happening. Again, for my department, you'll know at the end of the year, because you don't know what emergency will pop up until December or November 30th. The bigger issue would be, and we know that the next meeting that we'll have for the full board, it's the next one, right?
Yeah.
Or the one after that, will be at the library, and that will be a different setup. I've been running through that with the chairman and Anita, Kelly, and Jason and I when we're doing it. It'll be a different setup than you have here, so you'll need to be prepared. We have a mobile system that we're taking over there because their PA system is not designed to do a council type meeting. It's meant to normally do a presentation, so it's not meant to have anything out in the audience. We're bringing our own sub mixer and some wireless mics at the suggestion of the chairman, which will help a lot, but you won't have nearly as many mics as you have now. So in general, the chairman laid out how he would like it, and it made sense to me because it would at least we needed some idea of how it was going to go. He showed us that, allowed us to know where we're going to put the cameras, where we're going to run the wiring, how we can interact with their PA system and what we're bringing. We've tested once, we're going to have to test a couple more times, but we should have everything covered. In general, everybody's going to be sitting around six tables, and I really can't design. I probably should have bought a map here, and each set will have one mic, and it'll be a wireless mic. And what you'll do, if somebody wants to speak, you'll just hand it to them, and that person will speak in it. What I do want to caution you is, since it's not a counseling system, there's no control of the mics. They will all be live.
You weren't supposed to say that.
Well, we have an emergency dump we can do. But in general, it's everything's going to be hot. I'm saying that, so be careful with your conversations at your table. You want to make sure you're careful with that. The chairman's mics are always hot anyway, so they're more used to that. But in general, it should work out well. the layout will be a little different here, but we needed to reserve the stage because one of the whole points of this is the presentation to the world about all the good you're doing and the things coming forward. Well, you can't be up on a stage interfering with, it's a very large screen. And I think Dell and some other people are going to do presentations for that. But Andy and Anita and Kelly have worked out the layout, and we'll film whatever goes to that. But you need to understand there'll be less mics. It won't be awkward for you. You'll be able to, you'll be within an arm's length of a mic, so you'll be able to do some. I just want to caution you to make sure you're careful when you speak. Actually, it'll probably be farther away from you than it is now, but I don't know in a live meeting what it'll pick up and what it won't. So,
Right. So yeah, it's basically the board members. I believe it's 2 tables, but they're in a row, so it's like one big table, and there's 3 sets of those, and then we'll have 2 new members being sworn in, ideally for at that, and they'll have chairs sitting at the end of the table to join us for when that happens. So as far as people that are committee chair people, there is no seating chart. So you can sit wherever. We thought maybe all the committee chairs would just pass around the mic when they're doing their report for what happened in the year. But you can really do that anywhere. So as I figured, instead of trying to organize a seating chart and kind of manage that, there's really no reason to. We can just hand the mics. We'll have your name on the agenda, and we'll just go in order if that's acceptable.
we if you remember your request, we are trying to take into account George and Polk, that your limited mobility. So it'd be nice if you guys leave a spot on the edge for them so they can get in and out of that.
Yeah. Then department heads will be all behind with public comment right between all of the department heads. So those that can attend. So it should be a good an event. We still have a lot of business to do and some very heated debate potentially on a couple of subjects, but I just wanted to let you know that, you know, Kevin has really gone above and beyond to make sure that this is possible, and we'll see how it works. The whole goal was to see if a night meeting would, you know, at least once a year would be something the public that would be interested in, and it just happened to coincide with some really interesting business, our budget, and then also the presentation on the work plan for the river that has been produced by Burke Engineering. So that should be of value to a lot of people to see, you know, exactly what they're doing in Indiana and what we're doing here to make sure that it's one river system instead of a tale of two states, if you will. So with that being said, is there anything else? Did I hear something about a server going down over at the courthouse? Was there an event canceled or something?
We didn't have a server go down, but I'll look at that. You made me nervous right
Yeah.
there. At
No,
that point.
I heard something. There was an announcement. I think the state's attorney had something going on, expungement. There was a server down or something. I can't
Okay,
remember.
not that we're aware of, but we will look in there. They access some external servers that aren't ours, so it may have been that.
Could be.
One, we do
Sorry
have
not to fluster you on that. Sorry.
well, wait a minute. I do have a map that potentially we could mail out to you, but I want to make sure the chairman sees what we have, because there's real likelihood that we'll change that at some given points. I didn't want to send something out and it not be accurate, because almost up to the last minute, you kind of need the freedom to say, no, this isn't going to work. We need to move this over here. We'll be able to adapt to it. You just need to be able to do at the last moment. This will not be like your regular council meetings. It's our first time there. If you do it again, we'll do that one better. But even like, as you remember, the first videotape ones of these boarding, those weren't very smooth. This will be better than that, but you just get better each time you do it. It's a room that we don't know that much about it, so we're going to do as good as we will. The number one concern I've promised Chairman is the meeting is about you and the public. That will go well. The only thing would be somewhat of an issue is our part and how well we record it, but your meeting's going to go well.
Yeah.
I shouldn't
This
promise
whole
that.
transparency thing is essential, but it's not easy, especially when you move off site. We did it pretty inexpensively. You know, I think we have a couple of webcam video, you know, there's one right over there. You know, so it's not like we're out buying $4,000 high tech cameras and boards and things like that. But when you take it on the road, it makes it a little bit difficult. So,
And we did purchase some new stuff, but it's not specific for that. It's something we can make use of it, but it's things we needed to have as backup for what we have now. So it's something you needed anyway. We'll just put it together as a mobile package. So yes, there were additional things purchased, but they were going to be needed as our backup to our existing system. So
any questions for Kevin about any of this? All right, thank you. Next up, John Beavis.
Good morning. I'm here. We have one item on the agenda for today from the Health Department, and that is a proposal that was approved by the Board of Health last week. And I apologize that it's coming at this time. It's a little later in the year than we wanted, but we didn't have quorum in August, which is when we would have presented this to them originally, and so we would have been ahead by a month, which was the plan originally to help get it to the county board in time, which we are still on pace to be able to accomplish this if it's passed ultimately through this board and then the full board to go into effect if 2020, which is what the wordage is. But it's to increase the food fee, the license fee for the restaurants. And I think you have the paperwork. I sent that over, so it should be in your packets. So we are asking for a fee increase for the category 1s, 2s, and 3s of $50. So you can see on the front page there, if you're looking at that, currently it's $350 for the category 1, or what used to be called the high risk. And then category 2 is currently $300, and category 3, the low risk, is $200. The difference, if some of you don't remember, I know I've talked about this a number of times, but it doesn't hurt to just be reminded. When the state food code changed the language and created the high risk, medium risk, and low risk, that's the language that they created at the beginning. Some restaurants took offense to that, and I can understand why. They felt like if you were calling them a high risk, that meant that they were dangerous, and then that was not the case. It was based on the type of menu, the food items that they prepare. So in essence, and so they changed the name to 1, 2, and 3 to make that a little bit more palatable for them, so to speak. But in essence, your bigger facilities that prepare food in advance, serve it, and then have leftovers, it's cooled down, reheated, and then maybe there's leftovers the next day. Those are your high risk. Those are your category 1. So that's going to be like an Olive Garden, an Applebee's, just your bigger sit-down restaurants. Your medium risks, your category 2s then are going to be your smaller fast food chains, where you walk in, basically you order, they make it for you right then and there, they give it to you, you eat it, and you leave and you throw it away. There's no leftovers. So it's same day service typically. And then your category 1 is going to be your much smaller facilities. Those are going to be your gas stations, your 7-Elevens, basically grocery stores, the prepackaged food items. It's made somewhere else. It's not made here in our county, for example. So it's something that you buy. It's shelf stable. You take it home and then you prepare it. You're going to be adding ingredients to it as you cook or prepare that food item. So those are your category 1's facilities. So the high risk, the category 1 facilities are required to have 3 inspections a year, because that's where there's a better opportunity for a foodborne outbreak to occur. So they want the health departments to be inspecting those more often. And then your medium risks are once a year. And then your low risks are theoretically they're every other year, but you have to assess them every year anyway, just to make sure in case if they've changed their menu items or added something that changes their category. If we weren't going in every year to determine that, then we might miss it for 2 years. So ultimately, we had created within our ordinance language that we inspect those low risks once a year also. When I first started working at the health department, everybody was inspected twice a year regardless of your size. When they created this category of high, medium, and low, and category 1, 2, and 3, that's when they became the 3 inspections, one inspection and one every other year, but health departments can create language in their ordinance to be more stringent. You just can't be less stringent. So ultimately, we do the three. So the proposed fee increase of $50 would bring the fees up to $400, $350, and $250. We would include that to go down into the plan reviews for the facilities as they turn in. We're on pace this year, just in regards to the plan reviews. We're on pace by the end of this year. We should be at around 38 plan reviews for new establishments. Last year, we were at 38 also. So typically what's happening is when a place closes down, somebody else comes in to reopen that facility. So we've stayed pretty consistent. When I started working in 1987, there were 600 plus food establishments in the county. And there are still about 625 today. So they've, even with the growth in some of the areas, we've had some areas that have lost a number of establishments, but with the growth in Bradley and Bourbonnais, for example, we've increased in some numbers there.
Mr. Seroy,
Motion to approve, Mr. Chairman.
is there a second on the motion? Mr. Byrne?
Okay.
I have a question also,
sir.
Mr.
Okay.
Chairman. Mr. Beavis, the plan review fee, is that your first year of your license?
That would be, so if you came to us as a new facility, you would submit a set of plans and pay this fee. Then when you go to open up and get inspected to be open, you would pay for a food license separate.
Okay.
Good. Was there,
No, I'm
you
good.
good? Okay. Mr. Kinzinger.
Questions. License fee, is that annual or every 5 years?
It's annual.
And secondly, when was the last fee increase?
2015, so it was 5 years ago. And at that time, there was discussion that we would periodically look at that every few years. So it's been 5 years and in looking, and that's where the language of some of this is to some of the reasoning. With the new FDA food code, for example, and it's on here, the inspection times have increased by 20%. In terms of the amount of time we're now spending in there because of the changes in what they want us looking at versus how we were doing the inspections before. They're more risk-based instead of just looking for dirty floors, ceilings, and walls and holes here and there. They want us to be looking at the practices, the hygienic practices of the workers in the facility, how they're storing food, reheating it, that kind of thing. So that takes a little longer.
So this is a 15% increase.
For a 5
every
year,
15% a year for restaurants.
overall, yes. So that is correct. The previous increase in 2015, it had been 12 years since that increase and 12 years before that.
I had a question. If there's any more from the committee. I look at the other counties that are our size, and it seems to be within that realm. Tazewell, Vermillion, Macon's a little bit more. Well, a lot of bit more. LaSalle. Those are all pretty much in line with what we're talking about on a per capita basis. I know that whenever we raise fees, we are bound to have a study done on fees. Is that statute doesn't apply to the health department?
There's not specifically that I've been able to see that language per se, but I know in looking back at some of the historical fee increases in the past, there were very specific time studies that have been done. Recently we've researched the surrounding counties as to what the fees are in relation to what they do. We are also looking into, we look at, it's more than just for the food inspection per se. There's the mileage that's involved in this. There's the overtime work on the weekends for the temporary food portion of this. There's a number of facilities that are non-for-profit that don't have to pay for the license at all. That's in the ordinance, and based upon their non-for-profit status, they don't have to pay, but we're still required to do those inspections. So typically we are having inspectors out there every weekend doing that kind of a work. There's supplies that are involved, the thermometers, the litmus papers, the computers and things that we have to buy for that. The staff are required to have training. They are required to have 5 hours of food training every year to maintain for the local health department grant, the local health protection grant that we get from the state. You know, so there's costs involved with that. You know, for the conference, sometimes it's an overnight. Again, mileage, whether it's a trip to Springfield, to Peoria, or sometimes wherever it is that they would need to go for that. So those are a number, and then the computer program that we use for the food inspections, there's an annual maintenance fee that is built into that once we had that installed a number of years ago. And those fees constantly go
Mr.
up
Burr,
every year.
Do you have a question?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was unable to make the last meeting. I had a football game to go to. In determining the increase, did you calculate, okay, the impact on the budget over the last 5 years of all these inspections? So $50 up, raising it up, is that affect the budget? Have you noticed the increase in cost in inspections?
The
over last-
Environmental Health Division constantly loses money. More money is spent there because of there are 4 inspectors, the Director of Environmental Health, and the division office manager. And if they tried to just survive within that department on their own based upon the budget of their salaries and the equipment needed to maintain, to operate the food, sewage, water programs, and then all the other programs they do within that Environmental Health Division, they lose money every year, always have. You know, and looking at this $50 increase over the 5 years since the last increase comes out to about a 0.3% increase, which is about your cost of living from year to year. And then when you break it down, $50 divided by 365 days per year comes out to 13 cents a day in terms of the cost to the food facilities in this case. And I just want to add, on the Board of Health, one of the members is Mr. Jim Johannick, who operates 3 facilities within the county. They're all the high-risk facilities, the Category 1s. He voted in favor of this. You know, he voiced some concerns, but he just basically said at the end of the conversation that this is the standard operating, you know, method of doing business. You know, his electric and gas and all that gets raised every year. He gets a letter and says, I mean, if that's something that that was brought up in our meeting, something we may want to consider doing where there's just an annual increase. But then that language proposal would need to be brought here, and then it could be put within the ordinance if that's something to consider.
Mr. Kinzinger?
You know, I don't think that's a 0.3%, that's a 3% increase.
3%.
Not a 0.3%.
I'll have to look at that and see. That might be a
3%
typo.
per year. Mr. Lear?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I noted that there are different fees for the different categories, but the proposed increase is consistent for all 3 categories. Was there a reason for that?
Just for ease of raising the fee, $50. The fee increase 5 years ago was $100 for the Category 1, $100 for the Category 2, and $50 at that time for the Category 3. So it wasn't an across the board increase at that point. But in relation to the amount of time, we were looking at this 20% that it was costing time-wise to do all these inspections with the new FDA food code.
Yes, sir.
Is it possible to table this? I'm just looking at a $200 fee went to $250. That's a 20%, 25% increase. That's getting serious. I think we need to make certain that we've done due diligence in checking the costs and don't put people in jeopardy.
So is that a motion to table, or?
I'll put it up there and see. I'd like to see some research done on this. Yes, I'll move that we table this.
Is there a second to the table motion? Second time. Is there a motion or a second to the table motion? Final time. The table motion fails without a second. We can go through if there's any more questions, we can answer those. Otherwise, we can go to vote.
There was one other small change I would like to add on the back of this first sheet that talks about the fees. It's just a language thing that currently, under the priority items that we had changed at the beginning of the year, it says all priority items, which would be what used to be the critical violation. So say if there's a temperature violation that we have to go back.
Mr. Lear, sorry.
Mr. Chairman, I don't see the item that he's referring to.
It's on the back of this page.
On the back of our page, we have the agenda.
Okay, I'm sorry. So that did not come through then on my, what I sent you. It would have been on the back of that.
See what it says here. We can get that.
They don't have that.
Uh,
It was a double-sided sheet, so that's my error.
like to change the correction time on a priority violation in the food. So this is in addition to these, we're voting on this.
That would, correct. We could bring that one back since they don't have
We'd
that.
have to bring that
language.
back. 'Cause
That's
they don't
fine.
have it. Yeah, we just have the.
That's
fee
fine. It's
schedule on
actually,
there.
it's
Yeah.
something that's more lenient, and allows the restaurants more flexibility and time to make
Yeah.
the correction.
Because
So
it's not noted on the agenda as
That's
such,
fine,
too,
okay.
Because it's two separate items.
that's fine.
Any more questions? Alrighty, I guess this will be a roll call vote then.
Mr. Lear,
Aye.
Mr. Washington,
Aye.
Mr. Hess, Mr. Byrne,
Nay.
Ms. Weber,
Aye.
Mr. Payton,
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger,
Nay.
Ms. Haas,
Aye.
Mr. Seroy,
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler.
Nay.
Motion carries.
Alrighty, motion passes. Is that all you got today, sir?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Alrighty, don't have anything from schools today, from the regional office. We have no report from the VAC. And the county administrator's report.
Good morning. You have the staffing report in front of you, and as you can see, there's really very little activity this month. Probation added a person, public defender added one full-time person, and there was one deputy that was added. The big activity is in the corrections department. I think Sheriff has mentioned to you at the judicial meetings, for any of you there. He's got, they are showing at the high end, they're at 136. He's got 3 officers that are currently out on military leave for up to about a year or so. We don't know for sure. There are around 6 work comp officers that are off right now. That kind of changes day to day. We've got one officer that's on light duty now that come November 4th will go completely off duty, so that'll increase another. So we had 4 terminations in that area, add of 6 full-time and 1 part-time, so their head count right now is at 136. So a lot of that has to do with those people that are not available for work right now.
I did want to mention something along the public defender, that full-time position. In talking with Mr. Pentuick and also the chief judge, that full-time position, when they come up to the next part-timer who moves on that will not be replaced, it fits into the plan to replace 2 part-timers with full-time public defenders that are dedicated to courtroom. So through attrition, when we lose another public defender, it won't be replaced. And then when the next full-timer will obviously replace 2 public defenders. So I just wanted to make sure the committee knew that this is a plan to get to speed up the system on getting dedicated public defenders that only work for the county. So it should benefit us in a lot of different ways. Detention days, which is also financial situation, and also make sure that the defendants have the best possible representation that are dedicated towards them. Did you have a question?
Yes, just Anita, as you're talking to heads, department heads, and looking at the people that are presently employed by the county, is your feeling that we're psychologically healthy, the people are happy, and that we're doing things correctly for the employees? Well, it's a question that has to be asked
Right.
at some point.
I'll say that overall, I think it's getting better, but there were a lot of people that have residual concerns after the cuts. They still, there's kind of this fear or a lack of stability kind of thing that I think is an issue in our workforce.
Thank you.
Mr. Lear.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Going back to the military leave, how does that work in terms of payroll? The 3 correctional officers on military leave.
Well, they're paid by the military, but then Joanne calculates the difference between their average salary here and what's in the military, and they receive an equalization. Yeah.
Thank you.
Are they on VA benefits while they're gone in their insurance?
Right. They're off our benefits while they're gone.
Okay. And including family members as well? That's all covered
Yeah,
under VA?
yep.
Okay. Any other questions on staffing? Or anything in general for the county administrator? Put her on the spot.
Nothing. There was one other thing I did want to mention. Yesterday we talked about, or last month we talked about the claims review that our liability and risk management insurance company did, the ICRMT. We receive a monthly report, a claims analysis from them, which shows actual expenses plus the reserve for estimated future expenses. And that estimate for future expenses went down by about $300,000 this month, or about 17%. So we'll have the renewal tomorrow at finance, but it did come in flat. You'll see the actual numbers tomorrow, but I'm sure it had an impact then. It helped. So.
Any other questions? Thank you. Moving on to appointments. Let's see here. We'll do the first 3, and if we can get a motion to combine those, we'll go through it. It's the appointment of Nicholas M. Satoff to the BM Lewis Drainage District, appointment of Doug Morse to the Ethics Commission, and reappointment of Harold McQueen to the Mantino No. 3 Drainage District. Can I get a motion to combine and approve? Mr. Washington, second from Mr. Lear. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Now moving on to the appointment of the Animal Control Administrator. I guess you want to join me up here, Mike, or do you want to? No. He's going to be our man on the street. He's going to try out the mobile equipment. Yeah.
Mr. Microphone.
Yes.
Good morning.
K-Tel.
Yes. Thank you.
Happy birthday.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome. All right. So, as you guys know, the oversight of our animal control division has been transferred to the sheriff's office. And one of the things that I would like to have as the person who's responsible for it is somebody that I am familiar with and that I can trust and that I know will do a great job. And I am here to present one of our own employees who is not a police officer. Carrie Laird is, she's right now basically the administrator in our emergency management services. She does a great job with that. And she is who I am recommending for the position of animal control administrator.
So the way this works is the sheriff, obviously it's under his purview. He will recommend his choice to the board, and then we would have to be the advising consent to handle that appointment. So at this point, it would be appropriate to get a motion, and then we can go into any questions. Mr. Hess?
I make a motion, we accept
the sheriff's recommendation and appoint Carrie Laird. Okay, and then a second, Mr. Seroy. Actually, second, Mr. Payton. He was first. Now, is there any questions for the sheriff on this? You know, this is something new, and I'm sure that, you know, that everybody understands we're not going to hit the ground going 1,000 miles an hour, but
Yeah, we are.
but I can tell you we're hitting the ground with competent leadership, and that's what the important part of this. If we're going to build this the way that the sheriff wants to build it, he has to be comfortable with and have confidence in the management, and this is a direction I'm very happy to see him go. Mr. Lear.
Thank you. What training certifications are planned in terms of this appointment?
Well, that's a great question, because obviously, other than our department responding to a number of animal calls, we don't do a lot of animal training, animal control training within our department. However, she has already come in and said, and she's brought me different things that says, I want to do this, I want to do this, I want to do this. Now, we're not just going to send her to training to send her to training. We're going to send her to, obviously, it's important for her to understand what our animal control officers are doing out on the street. So she has already made it clear that she would like to go through that process, so she knows when they're out there what they're dealing with. You know, her expertise, obviously, with the sheriff's office and emergency management, while it really doesn't affect animals at this point, but just her experience in dealing with partners in this case animals, her ability to deal with partners in emergency services and the things that we do, whether it's nuclear, whether it's flooding, whether it's tornadoes, whatever. I mean, she has that ability to work well with others. But as far as training, I mean, she is going to go through the training that the officers are going through, because she wants to be part of that and wants to know exactly what they're doing and why they're doing it. And then we'll send her to some other training regarding animal safety, and she'll work closely with the state's attorney's office in prosecuting the abuse and neglect cases.
Thank you.
From one question I had was the relationships with the other shelters in the area is key to the overall success, and I'm sure that's on the radar as far as that introduction and coordination.
Absolutely, you know. Absolutely, and we'll start that process after. We didn't want to go introduce ourselves until we knew that this was actually going to happen. So,
Mr. Washington.
Will she be placed at the animal control, or will she remain at?
She will. She will still, because she will still have some duties with us. She will kind of split some time, and we'll kind of gauge how that goes, whether she needs to be in one place more or whatever. But yeah, right now she won't be there full time.
Okay.
So, is there any other questions? Alrighty, I guess they could go with a voice vote. This appointment, spending man. Okay, yes, it can't go voice vote. All those in favor of the appointment, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Okay. Alrighty, some openings. One opening on the Manteno number 9 Drainage District. 2 openings on the Kankakee County Regional Planning Commission. 1 opening on the Kankakee County Historic Preservation Commission for an architect. And then new business. Snuck it in right at the end. We have some amendments to our county code to accommodate our new structure on animal control. And Nancy, I don't know if you want to join us up here, or if
Yes.
you would ditch out like the sheriff tried to do, or
Hello. I didn't know it was your birthday, though. Happy birthday.
thank you.
I won't sing. That'll be my present to you.
This is the present, yes.
So we're going to make changes to section 10-1. Basically, it's the animal control personnel, and animal control subcommittee is what it is currently in our ordinance. As I went in front of community service and we kind of talked to AWAC so they have an idea of what's going on. And just to show why we need some updating is if you look on what is B4 currently, you know, the appointment, the applications had to be in by February 17th of 2006. So since that's in the past, it just shows we kind of need to go through the ordinance and make sure it's in line with not only the statutes, but then what the board wants in their statutes. So if you look what's included in your packet, anything that we're going to add is underlined. Anything we want to delete is struck through. So we're adding the statutory language of defining what an administrator is. Excuse me, as of August 1st of 2019, the legislature did change the statutes in the animal code. They made it so that the administrator can be somebody who is a non-vet. They also added what a deputy administrator is a veterinary license in the state of Illinois. It used to be a veterinary license in the state of Illinois appointed by administrator. They have now since added or the county board. So either the administrator or the county board can appoint the deputy administrator. And then they made the administrator a little bit more that it doesn't have to be the vet, but they do have to defer to the deputy administrator if they're not a vet. So that's in there. That's all statutory language. And then C turns into your Animal Welfare Advisory Committee or your AWAC. So we've changed that. Some of the big things is on 1, we changed it from what the original resolution set it up to be. We kind of adapted it to back when you approved Ms. Parker as being her reappointment and being committee chairperson. There was some language as to what you all wanted to accomplish through AWAC. So that language is in there. The AWAC board is going to consist of 8 members, which is different than 9. However, there's only 7 voting because your 8th member is your animal control director, and that is a non-voting position on the board. So we have 7. With speaking with AWAC, they thought that was important so that they're voting possibly, so there wouldn't be a tie set up so that they could have that. And then, you know, number 3 stays the same. We may have to adjust that once the committee once the committee goes to or once animal control goes under the sheriffs, it may have to turn to criminal justice. So we may have to adjust that once that occurs. And then we struck the application process because that can be defined by the board when the openings come.
Yes, Mr. Kinzinger.
Lacking a definition page and not being an attorney, in our case, who is the administrator of this?
The administrator is going to be what you just voted on, which would be Carrie Laird.
Okay, so that brings my next question. The county board chairman and the sheriff are elected?
Correct.
And we could have, they presently work together, but they may not always work together? Why can't we have similar language like in the existing paragraph A, the animal control administrator with the advice and consent of the county board, and then continue with your definitions? In other words, let the control person choose the administrator that we then approve or not approve.
You mean the sheriff?
The sheriff, if he's the administrator.
This is, though the sheriff's not the administrator, it's under his department.
Yes, right.
In case that would change, this is the exact statutory language. This is as the legislators have set up. It's, if you want to change it, it's up to the board, but this is exactly the language from the statute, which the administrator is appointed by the county board chairman with advice and consent of the county board members, because the health and safety of animals, to kind of generalize it, it's an authority given to the county board. So the county board makes that decision. The county board would come to that decision. So if for some reason whomever has control, like for example the sheriff, if he would put forth somebody and recommend that person as whom he wants as the administrator, if there would be some discussion, or maybe, you know, the chairman or the board, they want to know why or have a discussion, they can do that. Because even though it's, you transfer the department, animal control department, under the sheriff, kind of ultimately the body that is going to be responsible for the health and welfare and safety of the animals is you, because that's where the statutory authority is.
I understand what you're saying, but that's not really my issue.
Okay.
My issue is that if, for instance, I'm working for you, you should have the right to choose me, or mine is more of an issue of if you're my boss, then you should be able to suggest that either myself or Mr. Washington to work under you and get approval from the county board, rather than the county board saying, you will have to work with Ron Kinzinger because I like him better than Mr. Washington. Can't we have that set up so that if we're really gonna have two elected officials, the official who's in charge and we still have jurisdiction and we still have the power, he can make the choice, bring it, just like happened today, and bring
Right.
it to us, rather than Mr. Wheeler making that appointment and bringing it to us? That's what I'm looking for. I want the sheriff to do just exactly what happened today. I
Correct.
still have control, but he made the appointment.
I don't know if what happened today was necessarily the sheriff made the appointment. The sheriff made the recommendation of who his choice would
okay.
be.
That's what
So if you
that's what I
wanted to
want done.
add upon recommendation of,
Yes.
you know, that's something we can do. But I think statutorily, the ability to appoint still remains as it's
Fine.
stated.
If
which
you could
is-
add recommendation, I'd be very happy.
The just one question before that. If we have, because of Dillon's rule, we can't assume a power that the Illinois Constitution doesn't give us. If this is set forth, and this is a conversation we had beforehand, if this is set forth by the statute, by adding that, we've assumed a power, or the sheriff has assumed a power that is not given to him statutorily, or not. That's
I mean,
the
I think
question.
if you add the language with a recommendation, it doesn't necessarily mean,
that we're forced to accept it.
Correct.
That's the difference.
It's
That's it.
still-
I'm
Okay,
for that.
yeah.
That'd make
it's
me happy.
still your decision of whether or not, so if somebody brings you a recommendation and you're like, no, we don't want that person, then they would have to come back with another recommendation.
Sure.
I mean, if you want to add, the county board chairman with consent of the county board and recommendation of, I mean, this is, you know, if for some reason you would decide that, or the sheriff would decide that this is not what he wants to keep anymore, and you remove him, or you remove the animal control from the sheriff's department, you may not have an elected official to make a decision, then it may just be your decision, so.
I like the Ruth recommendation, if you can do that.
Well, let's, is there any more questions just on that part of it first? Because that is worthy of, if that is a motion, to, as best the state's attorney's office to add as the recommendation of the sheriff in there. It's not extraneous at this point. It could be just codified, and then we still don't have to take it. We can't be forced to take it by the law. I don't see really any reason we ever would, but is that a motion to amend to have the state's attorney's office include it where appropriate in here?
Yes, and just do it. I don't want to bring it back to this board.
Okay.
I'd just like to approve this
Okay.
with that understanding.
Is there a second to that motion? Mr. Lear, any questions about that motion? Okay, all those in favor of the amended version, say aye.
Aye.
Or the amendment, excuse me. Those opposed? Okay, that motion carries. So now we're just talking about this with that slight amendment. Mr. Seroy, did you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question was, is this going to be an annual appointment, or is this
No, this is evergreen.
just,
Yeah.
okay.
Mrs. Weber.
Question I have is the deputy administrator is a licensed veterinarian. Will that just be an appointment? Will it not come to us as an appointment?
Correct. Originally, the way the statute was written, it was just the administrator that made that decision. As of August 1st of 2019, they have added they have added the county board component that either the administrator or the county board can appoint. So now they've given two different avenues. So up until like July 31st of 2019, it was just the administrator. Now they have added the county board. So it can be either the administrator or the county board.
Okay.
And just for the, I mean, our deputy administrator was done by resolution.
Yeah.
So she was appointed by the county board. So we already kind of did that, but it's whichever you want to do.
All right. I think where maybe it comes in, and if someone is not appointed, where I think we're ultimately responsible to have a
Correct.
vet as the deputy.
Correct.
So maybe that's why that was done. I haven't read
Right.
why they instituted it, but then we would have to say, nobody's there, now we've got to act. But I'm sure the sheriff wouldn't get us
Right.
into that spot.
And I
so.
do agree. I think some of that, like if you look at the Public Act, they did adjust the administrator. You know, originally the administrator was to be a veterinarian licensed in the state of Illinois. They've now changed it to say that a non-veterinarian can serve as administrator. So that would be the situation if the administrator is appointed who's not a veterinarian, because you need that, you know, because then the administrator gives the deputy administrator deference, you need a licensed veterinarian, so the county board could appoint someone to make sure that that's done.
Sure. The only other question is just a word. In the makeup of the AWAC committee, the last sentence is saying, or the last part of the sentence saying, the animal control director. Do you think that is actually the animal control administrator?
You're
then?
correct, that should
Okay.
be the animal control director.
So that it's consistent with who
Yes.
actually is on that board.
Mhm.
Okay. So in this case, Ms. Laird, who was just appointed, is that
Who would
correct?
be appointed, yes.
So yeah, we need that to be on next month's executive. Actually, we don't need to appoint to AWAC, they just serve in that capacity.
Correct.
Yeah, so that's
She-
already there, we don't need to
yes.
have an official action to appoint.
Yeah, she by nature of
Yeah.
her appointment that you will do will
Yeah.
serve on that.
Any other questions? All right, thanks for your work on this. I guess, did we have a motion? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Awesome.
Thank
Have a good day. Any old business for the committee? Other, new, current? Motion to adjourn, Mr. Hess? Second, Mr. Seroy. All those are, thank you. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed. Have a good day.